You're now listening to one of our podcast episodes on Pod Academy. Check us out wherever you like listening to podcasts. Enjoy the video.
There's just an overload of information about what's happening in the world, some of which is fake news. And there's just an overload of also music. For example, I can start up Spotify or YouTube or whatever, and there's just endless streams of music just very cheaply. I can have it on in the background all the time. But it wasn't always like that. And at some points in history, music was a very rare commodity that very specific people could provide. And the same was true for the news. And oftentimes these two things came together in one role. There were people traveling around singing songs. In those songs, there was the events of the day or the year, the heroic deeds of whoever the song was about. And we're going to look at troubadours, bards, trouvères, which were important figures in the Middle Ages and also in the imagined Middle Ages of Tolkien, Game of Thrones, and in The Witcher. And in this very special episode, we have two more guests who know a lot more about music than Gil and I do. And they will tell us also a lot about that music that was popular at those times. So this will be a very music-filled episode, and we're very excited to get started.
They came after me with masterful deceit, broke down my lute and they kicked in my teeth, while the devil's horns minced our tender meat, and so cried the Witcher, he can't be bleed.
That's not how it happened. Where's your newfound respect?
Respect doesn't make history.
Hi everybody, this is Rutger. Hi Gil.
Hi.
Bridget Hall.
Hi, Rutger.
Hello, good morning for me.
Hi.
And good, what time is it for you?
Good afternoon. It's 4:00 in the afternoon.
And also joined by Shay Golan. Hello.
Hi, hello. Good morning.
And where are you? What time is it where you are?
The same time as Gil's. It's 9:07.
I can see you from my window, Shay. Hi.
Yeah. Hello.
Also same accent as Gil.
Gil's a bit better, I think.
Because I had to talk so often because of the YouTube channel and the podcast, so my accent got better along the way.
Actually, I actually got that. You know, if you look at the early videos and then you see the accent.
No, don't look at the older videos, please. So, Bridget, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Shay?
So, my name is Bridget. I'm from Australia. I am a violinist and violist, primarily. I did my degree in violin, and then I've done further study in early music, which is music from around about the 16th, 17th, early 18th centuries is my specialty area. But I also do a lot of music teaching, so that's really my main job. And I love music history.
And now we're going a little bit before your time of expertise.
Yes, although most early musicians sort of just like anything to do with music history, and we go back as far as we can. These periods sort of meld into one another as well. Music is a slow evolution, so many of the things that were happening in the 15th and 16th centuries linked to the earlier centuries as well. They got there in a slow process of evolution.
Shay, please.
So I'm Shay. I'm from Tel Aviv. I'm actually not music is not my profession. I'm an electrical engineer, but as a hobby, as we say in Israel, a campsite musician, campsite guitarist. I don't know how to translate it exactly. And I especially like American folk music, and through that I try to trace the history of that all the way to Scotland and Ireland in the Middle Ages, and through that it kind of connected to music in Game of Thrones, in Tolkien and stuff like that.
The world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone when Durin woke and walked alone.
I don't play anything. Rutger, you have a musical ear and fingers.
Maybe little ear and fingers, and I also like music gear a lot. So I'm building a little studio in my home. I've done some soldering on my own synthesizers and made it create a new noise generator to make these whoosh sounds with the addition of a Zener diode, which it's fun. So I guess we should start with Tolkien.
Far over the misty mountains cold.
A bard is primarily a storyteller. So Tolkien himself is sort of a bard of Middle-earth. He's telling us all the stories, giving us all the mythology, the genealogies, all of those typical things that a bard in the Middle Ages would actually do. As far as I know, Tolkien didn't set those to music, but they've been set to music by a number of other people as well, and they're obviously intended to be set to music because of the meters, of the verses, of the rhymes, of the way that the words fit together.
The pines were roaring on the height. The winds were moaning in the night. The fire was red, it flaming spread. The trees like torches blazed with light.
Bards would often be in the employ of a knight or a noble, and they would follow them around telling stories. They would often put those stories to music because that's a really great way, music is a great way of bringing stories to a wide context. Bards are particularly interested in telling the stories of people and keeping oral tradition alive.
When a humble bard graced a ride along with Geralt of Rivia, along came this song.
Bards really spoke to the common people, whereas the troubadours were of the nobility themselves as well.
It basically told, make a song out of this, like a PR. You're my PR firm.
Yeah, definitely.
Go forth and tell everybody like how awesome I am. He's like the hype man, like, oh.
Definitely. I would say that PR was one of their most important roles.
The Tale of Sir Robin. Sir Robin rode north through the dark forest of Ewing, accompanied by his favourite minstrels.
Bravely bold Sir Robin rode forth from Camelot. He was not afraid to die, oh brave Sir Robin. He was not at all afraid to be killed in nasty ways. Brave, 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 brave Sir Robin. He was not in the least bit scared to be mashed into a pulp, or to have his eyes gouged out and his elbows broken, to have his kneecap split and his body burned away, and his limbs all hacked and mangled, brave Sir Robin. His head smashed in and his heart cut out and his liver removed and his bowels unplugged and his...
Knights travelled from city to city and they needed to find employment. Bard was also in somewhat of the same position. If they were a good bard, they could go and be employed by a knight, travel around with them. If the knight got paid, the bard got paid.
So it's like a CV also. Listen to what I did.
Yeah, sure.
These are all the battles that I've won.
Music schools arose sort of like after the Renaissance or after the Enlightenment.
I think it was more like guilds, right?
Yeah. Guilds and families as well, clans, families, guilds.
So I'm sure they were pretty good if
Yeah.
they lived, if that was like their whole, vocation, not just like money, making money.
Oh, vocation, that's a good word.
Vocation is a good word,
It's
right?
a very good word.
I think it's the first time that I used it.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of competition. If you were not as good at your job as someone else and you're getting paid by the gig, your next gig might be hard to find. So, yeah, you better make sure you sing the right words about the night. You don't want Sir Robin's bard following you around somewhere telling everybody what a bad night you are. You want the good bard.
Brave Sir Robin ran away. No! Bravely ran away, away.
I didn't!
When danger reared its ugly head, he bravely turned his tail
No!
and fled. Yet brave Sir Robin turned about
I
and
didn't!
gallantly he chickened out. Bravely taking
I
to
never
his
did!
feet, he beat a very brave retreat.
Oh, lie!
Bravest of the brave Sir Robin.
There's a few good examples for bards that are not really good bards because they do the opposite of what they're expected to do, and they always arrive at a not so good end. The bard in the Holy Grail, they kill him off screen, And there's also in the Game of Thrones, there's the bard, the minstrel that gets his tongue cut off.
The boar's great tusks, they boded ill for good King Robert's health. And the beast was every bit as fat as Robert was himself. But our brave king cried, "Do your worst, I'll have your ugly head. You're nowhere near as murderous as the lion in my bed." King Robert lost his battle and he failed his final test. The lion ripped his balls off and the boar did all the rest.
Very amusing. Isn't it a funny song? Thank you for your rendition. I imagine it was even better received at that tavern.
I'm so sorry, Your Grace. We'll never sing it again. I swear.
Tell me, which do you favour? Your fingers or your tongue?
Your Grace?
So is this all a little bit on the edge of like societies that are not all that literate?
I think that's the one of the main reasons that they put the songs to music, is because when you can't write your song, the best way to memorize it is just to put it to music and sing it. And that's the way the common people can also memorize it, and through that learn of the history, of the mythology, of the latest news even.
Definitely. Bards were considered to be a very reliable source of information before people could read and write in the general population.
Like it also kind of rhymes, so I guess it's a bit like rappers or something, just bringing the street knowledge.
Yeah, it would be great.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
As traveling musicians, they needed to use portable instruments, so they have the lute, fiddle, I think harp at a certain point.
Like, what is a lute? Sorry for those who don't know.
Guitar is originated from the lute. Instrument with string that you pluck on.
So they had lots of different types of fiddles actually. They had a whole family called the viol family, which is still sort of played today. They're instruments that you generally have to sit down to play, and they have frets like a guitar. They sort of were descended from instruments like the viol and the rebec, which were in turn from the Middle East. So they came to Europe from the Middle East through trading around... Yes, represent.
Represent.
The lute actually is also just an oud with frets on it. It came to Europe via the Middle East as well. Lute, l'oud, and just, you know, that name evolved that way.
Oh, really?
It's very hard to play the oud. Like, I have a friend who plays the oud, and apparently you have to learn for years and years, and still you're only going to be average unless you dedicate your entire life to it.
Yeah, like the violin.
Yeah, the violin. Violin is
it's a bad choice. Yeah, only an idiot would play the violin.
Yeah, any fretless instrument seems really hard to me. I find it hard how you can know where the notes are.
You just learn it through muscle memory and years of isolated practice. Anyway, so they added frets to violin type instruments as well, and those ended up being the hurdy-gurdy and the nyckelharpa. So those were also commonly used in the medieval period. But like Shay said, you needed something that was portable. You need something that you don't have to blow into at the same time as play. And usually those instruments would be strung with gut strings, not with metal.
Gut strings from an animal?
Yes.
Which animals?
Oh, well, these days you could get them from cows, sheep, bulls.
Even today?
Oh, yeah. I have several instruments that are strung with... Sorry, I shouldn't be admitting this.
Why? Can't we make something else that doesn't involve killing an animal?
Yes, definitely.
You have drums still that are made from cow's skin.
Really? Yes,
Even,
and most instruments are glued together with horse glue.
Djembe is with cow's skin.
Oh no! I can't play the djembe now anymore.
Well, you could also think of it as using the parts of an animal that don't go into, meat pies. So it's
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they also go into the meat pie.
So, yes.
So basically the bard sounds a lot like the Witcher. Because he follows the Witcher around and he tells the stories and how awesome the Witcher is. Toss a coin to the Witcher.
He wiped out your past, got kicked in his chest. He's a friend of humanity, so give him the rest. That's my epic tale. Our champion prevailed, defeated the villain. Now pour him some mail. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty. Oh, toss a coin to your Witcher, a friend of humanity.
Yes, and the bard is a very funny character.
Jaski is probably the closest representation in all of the things that we're looking at. He's the closest to a real life bard.
Well, I guess the evolution of the instrument, you kind of already mentioned that you can't be blowing into it and sing at the same time. But I suppose the violin also is also a much later development, just because, well, you have to have it under your chin, and that doesn't really help with the singing either, I suppose.
You don't have to play the violin under your chin.
No, that's right. You can have it a little bit further down.
If you see country musicians playing the violin, they don't put it under their chin.
How do they hold it? Like a guitar?
Not exactly. They hold it like I don't know how you call this part.
Upper arm, I guess. Yeah, above the elbow.
Also the biceps, just seeing Shay's biceps is also...
Wow.
Yeah, thank you. I've been working out lately. There's also, I don't remember the name, but there's like it's more like a Far East kind of violin. Maybe Bridget will know the name. That you put it on your knee and you play it like this.
Yep, so there's a Chinese violin that you do sit on your knee. It's called an erhu. So that's also, there's so many different types of fiddles all through history that are played in a variety of different ways. But two of them that maybe you might be thinking of that are smaller examples of a pre-violin would be the pocket violin, which is very popular in France, and even into sort of the 18th century, band masters would play with the pocket violin. It was sort of around about a quarter of the size in its body of a regular violin, and it was held against the chest. And there's also the rebec, which is a small sort of tear-shaped violin that is very close to its Middle Eastern ancestors. But even if you play historical violin now, when we play Baroque violin, for instance, you learn to play chin off. So you balance it on your shoulder with no, extra paraphernalia that modern violinists use to hold up their violin. There's no chin rest or anything like that. You just balance it there, and you learn to hold it mostly with the assistance of the palm of your hand, and just play it like that.
Why? Why do you play it like that? Just to make it like more the way that it was?
Yes, actually, that is basically the reason.
How did they tune those early violins? So these bards are traveling around on their own. Were they all going really out of tune? Did they have pitchforks, or how did all of that work?
Tuning's a nightmare. If you were a traveling musician in the Middle Ages and you had to play with other people, usually that would mean playing in a church, so you would just go and you would tune to whatever the tuning was in the organ in the church, which could be higher, it could be low. It wasn't standardized anywhere. So the distance between two notes isn't necessarily what we know it as today. The two notes might have been closer together. They may have been further apart.
Really?
Yes, the frequencies of the notes can differ greatly. So all of those things would have been in consideration for a bard if he was traveling from place to place. Then bards from one region might have sounded drastically different in their harmony and in the way they composed melody to another region.
Right.
Yeah. And there was no standardization of how you tune your instrument.
What we know as sort of the two major tonalities of music these days, which is major music and minor music. Major music sounds happy, minor music sounds sad. This is probably the easiest way to describe them. Those two...
Unless you're doing blues and then you're mixing the two. And you're sad, but you're happy.
Well, actually, jazz and blues musicians use harmony that is probably quite similar to what was used in the Middle Ages.
The sky is crying. Can't you see the tears roll down the street?
And most of the songs in those shows, most of them sound pretty sad or ominous or something. Is that the way that it was, or just because these shows depict, suffering and death?
It depends on which song. If you take Talking, for instance, think about all the Hobbit songs. They're really happy.
Right.
Not sad at all.
At the beginning,
I
though.
think.
To heal my heart and drown my woe. Rain may fall and wind may blow, but there still be many miles to go.
If you're getting into that, I think one of the main uses that Tolkien does when he uses songs in his stories, the songs really, you can use only the song to portray the peoples he talks about. So you take, for instance, the song of the dwarves in the start of The Hobbit, the Far Over the Misty Mountains Cold.
Far over the misty mountains cold.
If you only read this song or listen to this song, it tells you the entire story of the Lonely Mountain and the civilization there, and then the destruction of the dragon, and it ends with the dwarves saying how they want to go back and reclaim their treasure and revenge the dragon and all of that. And even in the book, they sing the song, and later Bilbo he has like a panic attack, and then he goes back and he says, "Okay, tell me from the start what is the issue here?" And they say, "Didn't you hear our song? It's all there."
I guess because Bilbo, like readers of Lord of the Rings, you just skip over the song when you get to that part of the book. You're like, okay, whatever. Yay, 2 pages forward.
You skip the song in Lord of the Rings?
I skip the songs. In both times that I read it, skip the song.
Really?
Sorry.
Wow.
You know what you're missing.
No,
Sorry.
you missed a lot then.
I missed a lot.
Yeah.
On my third reread, I really enjoyed my rereading, by the way. So on my third rereading, I'm gonna read.
If you take again, if you look at just The Hobbit, you have the dwarf song, you have the goblin song, you have the elf song. So each song is different in mood and different in style, and it really adapts to the peoples that sing it. The goblin song is like very simple, one-syllable words, and a lot of like maim and torture and kill and whatever.
I feel a song coming on. Clap, snap, the black crack, grip, grab, pinch and nab, batter and beat, smell them stammer and squeak.
The elf song is really happy and merry and much more high class than the goblin song, for instance. And you have later, when they arrive to Lake Town, you have the song that the Lake Town people sing, and through that song you see how they are really excited about the dwarves coming back and the king under the mountain will return, and you see that something is very missing from that song, and that the dragon that still very much lives in the mountain. Again, through that song, you see how they're oblivious to the calamity that they're going to experience in a short while.
The king beneath the mountains, the king of carven stone, the lord of silver fountains shall come into his own. His crown shall be upholden, his harp shall be restrung, his halls shall echo golden to songs of yore resung. The woods shall wave on mountains, the grass beneath the sun. His wealth shall flow in fountains, and the rivers golden run. The streams shall run in gladness, the lake shall shine and burn. All sorrow fail and sadness at the mountain king's return.
Now, Tolkien did know a lot about different languages, and he created languages, and he knew how to fill a lot of books. I guess there must have also been some kind of rules to the rhymes that the different bards used. Like, is there a specific meter? Did Tolkien kind of approach what they actually did in terms of the lyrics in the Middle Ages? Do you know a little bit about that?
I'm not particularly informed on that, except that I know that the troubadours had a very specific system, and that all of their poetry was in Languedoc, which is a very old French language, or precursor to the French language, and they had all these different sorts of sets of poetry that they would write. It was very highly organised by metre, by syllable, by rhyme, all of the above, and there was multiple different categories. As for the bards, I would think that they would probably just fit things into simple melodic lines. They probably reused a lot of their melodies and a lot of their chord progressions, and they would probably have riffs or chord progressions that went with a particular feeling, and like what we were saying, what you guys were saying before about certain songs being happy or certain songs being sad. The way to sort of bring that level of drama to the words is to, back then, would have been to set it to a particular key that inspired that reaction from their audience. So they might want something to be frightening, so they would set it into a mode that sort of, the harmony is very crunchy sounding and unusual, so their audience would get the feeling of, get the feeling of the text that they were trying to portray. If they wanted something to sound sad or melancholy, they would probably put it in the Dorian mode, which is sort of the closest to, very close to what we have as a sort of a natural minor scale. It's actually the mode that Greensleeves is in. So Greensleeves is sort of a melancholic love song, which you would associate with, in the Middle Ages, sort of bardic poetry, minstrel song. You put it into a certain key, and that's how that message would come across. They would probably be interchangeable, reuse melodies between them.
So I guess a lot of this is sort of in favor of also memorizing it.
Yes.
I mean, how many of these people could actually read and write, or that they just have to, the rhyme is obviously makes it easier to memorize it on a specific meter. You can kind of just keep going and tell the whole story,
yes,
which might have been quite long. Probably memorize all this stuff. Like, how much of this is written down from the actual Middle Ages, from bards and troubadours?
I heard a saying of someone that researched the issue. I don't remember who, but he said when a ballad is written down, it dies. So we need to, it's a paraphrasing, right? There's also the advantage or the upside for not writing down anything is that you can always, improvise. You can change the lyrics or change the tune to better suit your crowd or the subject that you're singing about. And also there's no copyright. So you can, it was like a network that, you learn this song from that guy, and now you sing it like it's yours, and you're changing it. It's like constantly evolving. If I go back to what I spoke earlier about, like American folk music, you can see like traces of it, like in, for instance, Bob Dylan. A lot of his songs, especially his early songs, were like things that he took like several lines from old folk songs from Scotland or Ireland or those places, and he put them to modern use.
Oh, where have you been?
So, for instance, the song Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, there's a line, where have you been, my blue-eyed son, where have you been, my darling young one, and it's actually taken from an old ballad called Lord Randall. He took that tradition and he incorporated it into his modern music. Of course, what they also did freely in these times, and only later, I think it put into writing only like, I think 18th century, something like that. I think a lot of these cases, if they like only wrote down the lyrics and didn't write the tune, maybe they didn't know the tune, it kind of lost a lot of its significance in that way, because now you have only a written poem without the music. It's like only one half of the experience of the art.
Where have you been all the day, me old dear darling boy? Where have you been all the day, me old dear comfort and joy?
Have these songs survived? Do we know? We have like the lyrics for these songs?
Some have, yes. There's quite a lot of Irish bardic writing, especially when it comes to old Irish law. That class of bard was actually different from the class that would follow around the knights. They were called the Feely, and they were sort of the top class of bard. Their work was a little bit more academic and a little bit more formally organized, and therefore survived to be written down.
For me, it's like magic. It's like magic. People like playing music are like, how did you do that? There's like a distance between everything that I know and whatever you are doing with your fingers that I don't understand. And it comes out,
Like musicians in the Middle Ages and into the, after the Middle Ages were a little bit more like tradespeople. And if they had any kind of aptitude for it, they would be sent off at a really early age to be educated in music and have a sort of a master-apprentice relationship with the person who taught them. From my understanding, bards sort of led into minstrel culture, which really popularized secular music. So outside of the main place that people would have probably heard music in the Middle Ages was the church at the weekend. So they would go to church multiple times a week. Sometimes it was an all-day affair. They would take their animals in with them half the time. I remember someone describing Berks Church as like a very, very noisy place because half the time people would have their cattle up the back that they might be taking to the market later in the afternoon. So, yes, bards really popularized secular music. They brought it out of the church and into the general population. And as people did start to catch on and sing those songs, then minstrels also became really popular, which were that they were just there to entertain and to play music and not necessarily to bring the stories with them. But I'm sure that they would have taken a lot of influence from the bardic tradition in terms of the style of their music, in terms of the style of the rhyme and of the words in the pieces. And they may have even, copied the songs, copied the information in them and turned them into something that lasted a lot longer than probably they were intended to.
So were there like sort of anthems, secular anthems for a region that people know, like a bunch of people congregate in a bar or whatever, and they have a local song to sing or a hit or something like that?
And so he spoke, that Lord of Castamere, but now the rains weep o'er his halls with no one there to hear. Yes, now the rains weep o'er his halls and not a soul to hear. Good voice!
They didn't have all these communication channels, so how did they know anything? Right, including songs. Like, was there popularity? Like, oh, I've heard this tune before. Let's sing the one from last year. Or did any of that exist?
Where'd you learn the Lannister songs?
Drunk Lannisters.
I don't think that many of the tunes would have survived very long. If they were really, really popular, they might have survived. I mean, American folk culture still sort of does this. There'd be regions that have their own specific music, like the Appalachian mountain musicians and stuff like that. They would really, they have their local tunes that the people who've been playing with music with them for decades would know. Some that have been passed down through their families. And that Shay might know a little bit more about this than I would.
I think if you look at American folk music, one of the best examples, I think, for a song that is like really simple to learn and memorize is you can take the 12-bar blues.
Baby, don't you want to go?
A very like organized chord progression that anyone can learn. It uses only like 3 chords in the same progression. So it doesn't matter in which chord you start. If you start in A, then you will progress to the natural next chord that is in the same difference. If you start in like, I don't know, C or any other chord, it doesn't matter. But I'm guessing it kind of resembles what they did back then in the Middle Ages. I think Bridget touched on it earlier. She talked about regular riffs that they used. So if you use the same riff again and again, and everybody like memorize it, and even if they don't know to play an instrument themselves, I think it's a really good way to catch a tune, like a good hook.
Hey ho, the fishmonger's daughter, bar, bar, 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 bar.
You could think of it as sort of a local music language. So musical language is something that, you know, people study even today, and with particular reference to early music. A lot of what has been lost in terms of what we don't know about early music is the sort of the language properties of it. So not just what it is written down, but how that sounds when it's expressed, like the expressive qualities, what people did with the notes. Whether they sang loud, soft, bent the pitch, that kind of thing. Yeah, how they express themselves through that music. So I think 12-bar blues is a really good example of a musical language that has survived, and it's something that is very widely known today, but at a certain time it would have been very local. And probably the bards themselves communicated in local music languages, and they may have contributed to the spread of different music languages throughout different communities as well.
So there wasn't much also in the way of music notation, for example, writing it down with the 5 lines and this is the time signature and we're playing in this key. None of that existed.
Well, it did, but not amongst the common people.
Right.
Musical notation is probably around about 800 years old or a little bit more. Oh. It started just with 1 line, and then they started to add lines as those chants became more complicated. And there's old music from hundreds of years ago that has like 13 lines. You know, it's not always just the 5 lines. They at some point in history they reined it in, and even up to about 300 years ago, there's still music that has 6 lines. The clefs are all moved around. They're not in the places that we know them today. So that music did exist, but because the general population was not particularly literate, they wouldn't have been writing down their tunes. So the oral tradition of bardic culture was very important in that sense, to keep history alive, to tell stories, and to make sure that people knew what was going on.
The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Argo throned and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day.
By the way, did women play music, like as bards?
There were female troubadours. They were called troubarits. There were definitely female troubadours.
How were they called, sorry?
Troubarits.
Troubarits.
Yeah, so there was also a role for them. And there were definitely important figures in history that were female, such as, what's her name? Oh my god, I can't remember her name. Hildegard von Bingen, that's her name. Hildegard of Bingen in Germany. You know, she's a really important historical musician. So she was around in the 11th and 12th centuries.
She was also like, she was kind of like a nun or something, right? She was very religiously inspired, yeah.
Yes, she was. So she wouldn't have been, composing music for the common folk, but she was of the common folk herself, so she came to music through being part of a religious tradition.
I guess there's one advantage for women, even in that time, is like they can reach the higher notes that men can't. So,
some men could.
Yeah, some men. Yeah, right.
Eunuchs.
With some surgery.
It's interesting, like the way that this music started in the church and come out. It reminds me a little bit of.
Oh, there's a man going around. Well, I got a woman way over
blues music at the early, I think, 20th century was regarded as the satanic music. If you listen to blues, you're gonna end badly.
Oh, and look at the United States, ended very badly. Trump, the end.
Too much blues.
Too much blues.
Yeah, I'm sure Trump listens to a lot of blues. Yeah.
Back to the land of California, my sweet home, Chicago.
When we now see these shows and these films where they have the troubadours and the bards, would it have actually sounded anything like that? Or is actually what we now hear on these shows, is that actually probably much more modern in the melodies and the tuning, and would the medieval music have actually sounded very alien to us?
I think it probably would have. I think probably, especially the harmonies. If you listen to very old songs, there are some that have survived, including with notation. You can look them up you look up lots of songs on YouTube that are very ancient. There's a strong movement of early musicians who've recreated them as best as they possibly could. But yeah, I think it probably would have sounded very different. However, they would have just been communicating to their audience in the musical language that their audience understood. Yeah. And when we watch these shows, the same thing is sort of happening. The composers of the show are communicating to us in a musical language that we understand. Probably the closest thing that we would know as older music is the folk music that has survived over the years. So American folk music obviously came from Celtic music, and there's a lot of surviving Celtic music from the last few hundred years that has survived both by being written down and by being passed on by people playing it to each other as well. It may have sounded very different, but there also would have been similarities in terms of the way that we perceive it. Even if you listen to recordings of classical music from 100 years ago, they sound really different.
We'll start with an excerpt from Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, as played by the London Philharmonic Orchestra on July 20th, 1933. Now we will listen to a recording from nowadays.
Yeah, it's like language. If you go back in time 100 years, I'm sure it will be hard to understand even English in America or in the UK or something, just also because of the way pronunciation and
Yeah, absolutely.
And storytelling also changes all the time.
There were also clans and families of bards that passed their tradition down through their family over many, many years and generations. There was a really famous Irish clan of bards called the O'Dallais, who were hooked up with sort of local kings and nobles over multiple generations, like 5 or 6 generations, and said to be descended from kings themselves back in like pre-Middle Ages even. So their tradition of bardic culture came from way back. So they would have passed on their style, but also that style would have definitely evolved as musical tastes evolved, as instruments evolved, the way that people communicated evolved. Like there's evolution in all kinds of language, and musical language is the same. Mozart's piano was very different from a modern piano. Just in terms of how it sounded, how it was shaped. The shape of a violin was a little bit different as well.
And is it always getting better, or is it just something that we like now? Or is it like more professional and more precise and, quote unquote better?
I don't necessarily think that it's better. What do you think, Shay?
Let's remember that I think that one of the main advances we had in music, like in the last 100 years, is that it became popular. And everybody can listen to it, and everybody can make music today. Anyone can sit at their home and pick up the guitar, or like a keyboard that is connected to the computer, and just make music, and then post it on Spotify or I don't know, SoundCloud or anywhere. It may not be as professional as Beethoven or Bach or those guys, which are of course there. Of course there are. Let's
give them props.
Yeah, props. Yeah, thanks.
They were pretty good.
Yeah. The fact that every everyone in the world today, I don't know, maybe maybe not everyone, but like everyone from a certain age will know at least one song by the Beatles. It would never did that before. Maybe the standardization of the music and the way we maybe limited the music to the, like Bridget said, to the minor and major scale, and the equalized piano and all of that stuff. It maybe limited the music, but it also really made it accessible. And of course, when it mixed with the internet and the information development in the last like 50 years, it exploded. Again, look at medieval folk music and trace it all the way to American folk music, and the way that it mixed with the African music, and from that it generated all of the popular music we know today: blues, jazz, country, rock and roll, hip hop. Everything originated from this mix of the European medieval music and the Black African music, and it exploded to the entire world. It's really amazing.
It is amazing.
Okay, everybody, let's wrap it up.
Awesome. You want to do it again about another music in the movies thing?
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah, why not?
I think it would be super fun to also go a bit more into just the really classical era, and maybe we can like first watch Amadeus together or things like that, and more talk about that time as well. That would be fun.
Oh yeah, that would be fun.
We haven't said that you two are long-time members of the show.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
for
much
providing us with the show. It's very fun to listen to, especially now that we have commute to work.
Actually, I binged the Biblical Proportion podcast. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, same. They were great.
Yay.
Really good.
I think we stumbled onto have a theory that basically what we're doing is what people have always done. We're going to the sacred holy text and we're telling everybody all the interpretations that you've heard. No, they're wrong. Listen to us. This is the right interpretation. Just read the text. You can't read the text because it's in a secret language, ancient language. Okay, so trust us. We'll tell you what God is. Actually, two gods. It's not one God. It somehow became what it's not supposed to be, I guess. But
it's the same as all the rest.
Same as all the rest, but different.
I really like the lame literal translations you do to the Hebrew. And then he was bad, he was sad.
High in the halls of the kings who are gone, Jenny would dance with her ghosts, the ones she had lost and the ones she had found, and the ones who had loved her the most, the ones who'd been gone for so very long, she couldn't remember their names. They spun her around on the damp old stones, spun away all her sorrow and pain. And she never wanted to leave, never wanted to leave, never.
So let's wrap it up. We've learned a lot about these figures who were basically craftsmen, but with their instruments and their songs and their stories, traveling around Europe and bringing the news and the entertainment to the people and glorifying their own patrons, just like we here at the Part Academy glorify our patrons by having them on the show. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we are going to enjoy some more medieval music, and thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.
That's enough music for now, lads.